We talk about a lot, don't we, people earning vast amounts of money on this show. We're not just talking about politicians, but superstars, people like that, you know. And, you talk about $1 million salary now and you think, oh, right, as if it's nothing. But it was interesting to find out when I was looking back through some other videos of some of the superstars that I've been lucky enough to meet in this wonderful career. Who was the very first $1 million executive CEO over in the United States? And as ever, it may surprise you. Hi, good morning, Neil Sean here. Nice to see you. I hope you're keeping well, fine and dandy, whatever we're doing today. Yeah, this particular story fascinated me because, as I say, I cover business stories in my other job as well. And, when you talk about salaries of people today, you look and think, wow, all of that money, how could they possibly spend it, And then you kind of think, well, who created this? Because I don't know if you remember, but way back in the early 60s, when Cleopatra was the big thing, Elizabeth Taylor was the very first actress to ever receive $1 million salary from 20th Century Fox. Not just that, but she had additional living expenses, hair and makeup, living in the Dorchester. I mean, it was a phenomenal package. She was a beautiful woman and they thought they were going to get their vast return. Sadly, that took quite a few years and a lot more expense. In fact, it created such a problem for 20th Century Fox that they almost went bankrupt. This particular man who actually holds the honor of being the very first executive to be $1 million a year CEO. That's right, it's none other than the MGM boss, Louis B. Mayer, who became that in the late 1930s when the bosses over in New York of Lou's Inc. decided that he was worth this because he'd asked it and he was making the company such a lot of money. As we know, MGM created mega stars like Ava Gardner, Clark Gable, Judy Garland, Gene Kelly. So many of them went through that particular stable. As I say, I was lucky enough to meet many of the golden stars of yesteryear of Hollywood, including Ann Miller, Mickey Rooney, Sid Charisse. It was just fabulous getting to sit down and talk to these people about exactly what it was like in the golden era. What was fascinating, in fact, was the fact that they weren't as rich as you possibly would have thought. You see, they were on 7-year contracts, and although they were world famous and raking in millions of dollars for the company as a studio employee, they simply weren't making the money themselves. They had a good salary, but as Mickey Rooney pointed out to me, which was fascinating, the studio took care of everything, from the servants, the car, the house. But equally, when they dispensed with your services, everything went. He told me a very strange story, which was backed up by Judy Garland's daughter, Lorna Luft, that when Judy was 17 on the set of The Wizard of Oz, Louis B. Mayer presented her with a much desired horse. It was brought out along with the cake and a car. She couldn't believe her luck. But as Lorna told me, very quickly, the minute the photographers had disappeared, the car disappeared, she never saw the horse again, and because she was on a diet, she wasn't allowed any of the cake. That was the controlling nature that made Louis B. Mayer the biggest and the most highly paid person in America right through the decade. Fascinating to know, isn't it? So when you look around now and you see these executives of Amazon, on Facebook, Meta, all of these big companies, and you think, wow, they're on these mega salaries. Truly, ground was broken way back in the 1930s with this man. But we have a lot to thank Louis B. Mayer for. Well, a lot of people say he was a very difficult boss to work for. He did leave behind a legacy of so many wonderful films which are screened around the world even today. And as ever, all things in showbiz come a full circle because back in 1951, he got fired and was replaced by somebody younger, not as successful, not as rich as him, and certainly not as powerful. But at that point, as Mickey Rooney said, even Louis B. Mayer knew the game was over. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.